And Hillary Clinton reaching out to potential voters today in Iowa. She's hoping to build grassroots support there. Iowa has been tricky for Hillary Clinton in the past. She is still, at this point, avoiding reporters and a growing list of some thorny issues that many would like to ask her questions about, leaving those awkward questions, for now at least, unanswered. Welcome, everybody, to an hour or two now of America's Newsroom. I'm Martha McCallum.
And I'm Greg Jarrett in for Bill Hemmer. Benghazi, foreign donations, free trade, Iraq, email, the list goes on and on and on. And now a former advisor to the Obama campaign says Hillary Clinton is making a huge mistake by not answering questions.
Answer questions, and she has to do it routinely, so it's not a major news event when she takes a few questions from the news media. She has to start getting into the rhythm of a campaign where there's where she's out there, she's answering questions, she's making speeches, and she's not, you know, it would be a terrible mistake to not do that.
Well, Ed Henry joins us now on the campaign trail in Mason City, Iowa. Ed, good to see you. Any sign that Hillary Clinton will finally take questions there on the ground in Iowa?
No, in fact, she has a closed event today, not going to be talking to the media, at least no plans to just yet. And I think what David Axelrod is talking about right there is what you hear in politics, the old term of letting the air out of the balloon and taking some questions from the media. If you don't do that, that balloon just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and those questions are building up, as you mentioned, whether it's Benghazi, whether it's emails, whether it's the Clinton Foundation. And so, look, the Clinton campaign has a strategy. They believe if she just comes here to this tiny town in northern Iowa, for example, she'll be talking to voters instead of talking to reporters like me, and that's going to help her in the Iowa caucuses, which, remember, tripped her up back in 2008, Greg.
Yeah. You know, Ed, is there some new information on the big financial disclosure?
She had to put out a disclosure late Friday night to the Federal Election Commission now that she's a declared candidate. What was fascinating about it, she had to disclose $25 million in speech income alone for she and former President Bill Clinton back in 2014, another $5 million for her book. So if you look at that $30 million total, that would be another question for her today, which is that she's here in Iowa launching a small business middle class initiative as she's disclosing that the Clintons last year took in $30 million. Nowhere close to that dead broke phrase we heard about last year, Greg.
Yeah, no kidding. But, you know, she's there for everyday Americans. And the New York Times had an interesting story. They weren't the only ones, reporting it was $130 million in speaking fees alone since Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton left the White House. So, wow, that's a lot of dough. Ed Henry in Iowa. Ed, thanks very much.
Yep. Good to see you.
Well, there's a list of burning questions that have been avoided so far by candidate Clinton, and one other that may be on her list was brought up by Republican Liz Cheney, who wondered this over the weekend, tweeting out, "When will the media ask Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton a key question for 2016? Knowing what we know now, would you still have abandoned Iraq?" Obviously referring to the rise of ISIS in the wake of our withdrawal from that area. Britt Hume joins me now, Fox News senior political analyst. Britt, good morning. Good to have you with us. What do you think about that question? You know, so much attention on the Iraq 2003 question, but Liz Cheney is saying that the real question for Hillary Clinton is going to be whether or not we should have pulled out the way that we did.
Well, of course, that's a reasonable question, and somebody would certainly eventually ask her of it if they had any access to her. She's running the most peculiar presidential campaign I've ever seen, and I suppose it may make sense for her to do it this way, because one of the things that does happen on campaigns when you're out, you know, you've got your message of the day that you're communicating in one way or another with voters, and you've planned it out very carefully to have this message for this and that group and so on, is that, you know, some reporter comes along and asks you a question and you answer the question, and whatever you say becomes the news of the day instead of what you want to be the news of the day, or at least the message of the day. But this can't go on forever, Martha. She's eventually going to have to face up to that and other questions about foreign policy. And when you think about it, you know, on Iraq, you know, Jeb Bush was asked what he would have done. Well, Hillary Clinton did do something at the time. She voted to authorize that war.
Yeah. She absolutely did. And that was a big issue for her when she was running against Barack Obama in Iowa back in 2008. So it's clearly something that she may not want to answer questions about. But as David Axelrod pointed out, you get better at this. I mean, that's the idea. Once you start answering questions, and she's going to have to come up with answers for the email question, for the Benghazi question, for the foundation question. And perhaps the more she goes at it, the better she will get at answering it. Maybe she can succeed in putting some of it behind her if she does. But that is clearly not the strategy, as you point out. It's weird, Brett.
It is weird. I've never seen anything quite like it. And you can see the effect that it can have. I mean, you go out and answer questions when you are rusty, as she unquestionably is. And, you know, Jeb Bush, who's a little rusty, had trouble all last week because of the answer he gave to Megyn Kelly's question about, you know, knowing what we know now, would he have done what his brother did? And so rust is a problem, and it's, you know, the smartest candidates are not immune to it. Hillary Clinton's a smart woman, and she's a hard worker, but I think, you know, she's not in the habit of being open with the press. And they may be, Martha, that they're just putting it off as long as they can because they don't expect it's going to go well when it starts.
But, you know, you raise an interesting point, because looking at this, it looks like Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton are the people who are going to have the most money, the most support, certainly the most name recognition. But the two of them are both off to a pretty tough start. Britt, when you look down the road, do you see a scenario where one of them isn't in the picture, neither one of them is in the picture, and this whole game changes dramatically as we go through it?
I can see a scenario, if my imagination is in full swing, I can see a picture in which neither of them is in it. But so far, all I can say for sure is that, you know, Jeb Bush has a long way to go if he's going to be the main guy. I mean, you know, when he first announced that he was starting this committee and getting his fundraising going, you know, he kind of surged to a lead. He's raised a lot of money. He's sort of a presumptive front runner, although I don't think there's any front runner really yet. Yeah. And he's not gained much altitude in the polling. And he gives these rather calm and reasoned speeches and talks that, you know, intelligent people listen to and nod their heads and think he's good, but rank and file Republicans so far have not been much excited by him. Not
necessarily revving up the room at this point.
Exactly. So here we go.
Yeah, well, we like it when your imagination is in full swing, sir. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Martha.
Good to see you.